Does it seem like there are more plants behind me than there were before? It's been a while since I've done one of these. I feel out of practice. Well, the other day I finished reading the Andalite Chronicles by K.A. Applegate. So first off, I'm going to ask a question that I'm not going to get an immediate answer to. How many of you, my subscribers, have actually read the Animorphs series? Or some part of the Animorphs series? Has anyone actually read the entire thing? If anyone's read the entire thing, I applaud you. Anyway, for those of you who have not read or heard of the Animorphs series, I'll explain. It's a series of children's science fiction books that follow these 5 and later 6 kids who have been given the ability to morph into any kind of animal that they touch. And the reason why they need this morphing ability is because the planet Earth is under attack by aliens. These aliens are called Yeerks, and in their natural form they are these little gray slugs which crawl into your ear and take over your brain. The Andalites, these guys here, are the main fighting force against the Yeerks. The Andalites naturally have the power to morph, and it was an Andalite who gave the power to morph to these 5 kids. It is in fact this Andalite that this book is about. And so this book, the Andalite Chronicles, is actually a prequel to the numbered books in the series. So I've talked to you a little bit in the review of the AI Gang trilogy and the review of The Time Traveler's Wife about how I feel about science fiction. And it occurs to me that I may have given you an incorrect impression on my opinion of science fiction. I have said that in order for science fiction to work adequately, it needs to have less of the technical elements and more of a storyline and more character development, which unfortunately a lot of science fiction doesn't have. And this might lead you to believe that I dislike the technical aspect of science fiction, which is totally not true. I love the technical aspect of science fiction. It's kind of what makes it science fiction. I just don't think it should be allowed to control the story. And so I love the little technical details, not just in this book, but in the entire Animorphs series. It's one of the things that I really liked about it. I love the story, and I love the concept behind the Animorphs series. And reading this book actually made me kind of want to read the Animorphs series again. And I will say that I did enjoy reading this again. I did enjoy being reacquainted with the story of the Animorphs and being reacquainted with this book. I liked this book better than the other books, I think, just because it gave me a lot of backstory, and I really like reading backstory, that sort of thing. However, this book is not on my favorites anymore, and I will give you a few reasons why. You run into a certain amount of difficulty when you have to write a story from an alien's perspective. All of K.A. Applegate's Animorphs series are written from the point of view of the person who's telling it, and they usually alternate between the 5 or 6 kids. And this one is no exception. It's written from the point of view of Elfangor. It's like Elfangor is telling you the story. But when it's an alien telling you the story, you have a certain amount of difficulty. There are going to be certain terms that you're not going to hear an alien use. And in a lot of ways, that's true of this novel. There are a lot of things that some of the humans in the story say that he doesn't make any sense out of, and so on. But there are also moments when he's telling the story where he uses expressions that you wouldn't expect an alien life form to really know. One of the ones that comes up a couple of times is that we have expressions that use the word heart, metaphorically. I know something in my heart, I felt a pain in my heart, you know, that it broke my heart, that sort of thing. Andalites have more than one heart, and so those change to it broke my hearts, which is kind of funny, and I think that's kind of what she was going for, but I don't think that an Andalite would be using that expression at all. Andalites are very technical, they're very literal. This one didn't really understand the concept of sarcasm. And so I think if somebody said that they had a broken heart, they would be more inclined to think, is something wrong with your heart? You have a health problem? Rather than think of it in the same way that we think of it, and so that didn't quite ring true for me. Another problem that she ran into with this book was that she essentially had 2 different audiences. See, the story that Elfangor is telling is for an Andalite audience, and so in that way he has to explain a lot of things that are uniquely human, like smiling, because Andalites don't have mouths, they don't smile, eating the way humans do, being able to turn their heads side to side, look behind them, expressions like shaking their head for no and nodding their head for yes. He has to explain all of those because, of course, Andalites aren't familiar with them. The real-life audience, the second audience, is, of course, us. And we might not be familiar with some of the Andalite customs that he refers to in this book. But rather than finding creative ways to explain them where they're explained in the story, she actually has Elfangor explaining those Andalite customs. Which, if you were directing your story towards Andalites, you wouldn't waste time doing that, because they already know, it's already common knowledge to them. In general, I thought the story was good, and I loved the concept of these novels. I felt like that the book could have used just a little bit more editing, and just in general, I wasn't happy with the style of writing. It works for the kids, it didn't quite ring true for this character. And so I did enjoy reading this again, and I might even go back and start to reread the Animorph books, but I can't really call it a favorite anymore. That concludes this book review. In these last few weeks of Lent, I have decided to read Mary Called Magdalene by Margaret George. I may or may not get that finished before Easter, but whether or not I do, there will be a book review. I'll see you then. Bye. I don't think these flowers were here last time. I'm being distracted.